What if I told you that the nut doctors always praise as good for the brain might actually be speeding up the death of your neurons? Yes, this isn't just another internet rumor. A recent study published by American neurologists showed that certain compounds found in some nuts have neurotoxic potential for seniors. And the worst part, no one talks about it. You won't see it on TV. No doctor I know dares to comment on it publicly. But if you're over 60, this information is urgent, because what looks natural and healthy may be quietly shortening your life. In the next few seconds, I'll show you which nuts protected my father's brain and which ones he stopped eating forever. This is the truth behind nuts that no one tells you. And that's exactly why they're still marketed as superfoods. Nut 1. Pecan. The memory guardian. Many people associate pecans only with holiday desserts, those American pies, caramel recipes, treats that make your blood sugar rise just by looking at them. But what few people know, especially those over 60, is that behind that wrinkled shell and buttery flavor lies a true shield against brain aging. And this isn't an exaggeration. Pecan is one of the most concentrated sources of vitamin E among all nuts. And vitamin E is simply the most studied antioxidant when it comes to neuronal protection. The brain, especially in the elderly, is highly susceptible to oxidative stress, the same process often described as a silent rust that corrodes our cells from the inside. A study published by Tufts University in the United States revealed that adults with higher daily intake of vitamin E had a significantly lower risk of developing Alzheimer's and other dementia. That's because it neutralizes free radicals before they destroy synapses, the bridges connecting one neuron to another. But that's not all. Pecan is also rich in monosaturated fatty acids and anti-inflammatory polyphenols. And what does that mean? Less chronic brain inflammation, the kind that causes brain fog, memory lapses, and even mood swings that many seniors experience, thinking it's just getting older. And the best part, you don't need a handful to see results. Just 3 to 5 pecans a day is enough. Really, you can sprinkle them on yogurt, blend them into a smoothie, or eat them plain as an afternoon snack. Just avoid industrial versions, caramelized or chocolate-covered, which add sugar and cancel out the protective effects. Here's a fun fact. Native American tribes from the southern U.S. used to eat pecans as a source of strength and longevity. In fact, the word pecan comes from a Native American language and means nut that's hard to crack. But it's worth the effort, because inside is one of the richest natural antioxidant foods in the world. And here's a golden tip. Combine pecans with berries or pieces of 70% dark chocolate. This mix enhances the brain protective effects even more, and the taste, unbeatable. 2. Walnut. The brain that feeds the brain. You've probably heard that this one is good for the brain. And guess what? For once, popular wisdom got it right, but not in the way you might think. The walnut, as it's called in English, even looks like a miniature human brain. But the resemblance goes far beyond appearance. This nut activates neurological mechanisms that quite literally feed your synapses, and I do mean literally. Researchers at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, conducted a study with more than 15,000 adults and found a direct association between regular walnut consumption and improved cognitive performance, especially in people over 60. The most improved functions were memory, processing speed, and concentration. The secret lies in the unique combination that walnuts offer: high levels of alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3, natural melatonin, antioxidants, and polyphenols. This synergy reduces the risk of inflammation in brain vessels, improves communication between neurons, and protects against brain shrinkage, a natural part of aging that, in excess, is linked to dementia. Now here's a little-known detail. Most of the antioxidant compounds in walnuts are found in the thin, brownish skin that covers the nut. And that's exactly the part most people remove because they think it's bitter or ugly. A mistake that could cost you, especially after 60. A practical tip. Soak walnuts in filtered water for 6 to 8 hours before eating. This reduces natural antinutrients and activates enzymes that improve digestion and nutrient absorption. Then, just dry them in a low-temperature oven or eat them as is, if you prefer them softer. If you add 2 to 3 walnuts to your breakfast every day, for example, you'll already be giving your brain a powerful dose of protection. You can mix them into oatmeal, yogurt, smoothies, or combine them with other seeds as an afternoon snack. And here's a fun fact. Tibetan monks used to eat walnuts as a source of energy to maintain focus during long meditation periods. Coincidence? Maybe not. They intuitively understood what science now confirms. Walnuts are one of the best allies for healthy aging. Now, if you think nothing can top this nut in terms of benefits, just wait until you meet the next one. It contains a natural compound capable of protecting the brain against the buildup of toxic proteins, the same ones that appear in scans of people who develop Alzheimer's. Nut 3. Brazil nut, the invisible shield against brain shrinkage, the Brazil nut, that large. Buttery tasting nut, often found in mixed nut packs, is almost always left at the bottom of the jar. Many people avoid it because it's too oily or too big. Little do they know, they're missing out on one of the most protective foods for the aging brain. And it's not just me saying that, it's science. The Brazil nut is the richest natural source of selenium in the world. And this mineral, although rarely talked about in daily life, is essential for neutralizing free radicals that attack the brain and speed up its degeneration. Selenium acts like a cellular janitor, clearing toxic residues and reducing chronic inflammation, especially in sensitive areas like the hippocampus, which is responsible for recent memory. A Brazilian study conducted by the Federal University of Santa Maria, in partnership with Australian researchers, showed that elderly people with low selenium levels in their blood had a higher risk of accelerated cognitive decline and performed worse in memory and reasoning tests. And there's more. The selenium found in Brazil nuts also plays a role in the production of glutathione peroxidase, an antioxidant enzyme considered essential for proper mitochondrial function. And as you know, without healthy mitochondria, the brain literally runs out of energy. That's when symptoms start to show up, like brain fog, unexplained fatigue, lack of clarity, and even difficulty finding simple words in the middle of a conversation. Now, pay attention. Brazil nuts are powerful, but should be consumed in moderation. Just one nut per day, yes, only one is enough to meet an adult's selenium needs. 2, at most. That's because too much can overload the thyroid, especially in people with a predisposition to hormonal problems. So no overdoing it, okay? You can eat it plain as a dessert after lunch or chopped on top of fruit. It pairs beautifully with banana, papaya, and even savory dishes like grain bowls or tropical salads. And the flavor? Oh, the flavor. It's smooth and creamy, even appealing to those who say they don't like nuts. Interestingly, indigenous people from the Amazon use this nut as a sacred food to keep the mind sharp during rituals and long hunts. Today, science explains why. The selenium that protects your neurons also sharpens your reflexes. Now that you know the 3 best nuts for the aging brain, it's time to open your eyes. Because the next 3 nuts, although popular, may have a devastating effect on your mental health, and you might be eating them regularly without knowing the risk. Bonus, pistachio, the green nut that lights up the brain when we think of pistachios. We often picture that half-open shell, vibrant green color, and slightly sweet flavor. Maybe you remember it as a special touch in ice cream or mixed nuts, always catching the eye with its color. But few people know that for those over 60, it can be a true green superfood for the brain. Pistachios are rich in lutein and zeaxanthine, 2 antioxidants well known for their protective effects on the retina. But here's what few people mention. These same compounds also act directly on brain cells, helping with neuron communication and protecting against premature aging. In addition, pistachios are one of the few nuts that contain a high amount of vitamin B6, which is essential for producing neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, and GABA, all of which directly affect your mood, memory, and even sleep. And if there's one thing that ages the brain faster than time, it's sleep deprivation and constant stress, and there's more. Researchers at Loma Linda University in California found that regular consumption of pistachios increases brainwave activity related to cognition, information retention, and quick response, especially in older adults. In other words, your brain literally lights up with pistachios. Now, a practical tip: choose pistachios with shells and no added salt. This reduces the risk of excessive sodium and helps you eat more slowly, which is great for digestion and satiety. A safe portion, about 30 grams a day or a small handful. And here's an interesting trick. You can crush pistachios and use them as a green topping over salads, roasted vegetables, or even soups. It adds flavor, a crunchy texture, and a daily dose of brain protection. Oh, and a curious detail. In the Middle East, pistachios were called the nut of laughter because the open shell looked like a smile, and because people believed eating them made you happier and more lighthearted. Today, science shows that this good mood might have a biochemical explanation thanks to the dopamine they help produce. Now that you've added this extra support to your daily routine, we've reached the most important moment in the video. Because even if you're eating all these brain-boosting nuts, if you're also eating any of the next 3 frequently, damage may be happening inside, silently. The worst nut. Nut 1. Macadamia, the gourmet illusion that numbs the brain among all the nuts marketed as superfoods. Few have the fame of macadamia. It's beautiful, round, with a buttery taste and refined texture. Even the name sounds fancy, and that's no coincidence. It's one of the most expensive nuts on the market. But here's a truth almost no one says out loud. 4 brains over 60. Macadamia can be a hidden disaster inside a pretty shell. Macadamia is absurdly high in fat. About 75% of its composition is pure fat. And although some of it is monounsaturated, which can be beneficial, the problem lies in the imbalance. It contains almost no omega-3 and very few active micronutrients that support brain health, such as vitamin E, choline, or selenium. In other words, lots of fat, little function. And what happens when an aging brain consumes excessive, unbalanced fat? The answer is cognitive sluggishness. You know that feeling of a heavy head, difficulty focusing, remembering what you were about to do, or following a conversation that can be worsened by diets rich in concentrated fats like those in macadamia, especially when combined with a sedentary lifestyle and low antioxidant intake. And there's more. Studies from the National Institute on Aging indicate that diets low in omega-3 and high in neutral lipids, like those found in macadamia, increase the risk of brain shrinkage with age, particularly in the hippocampus, the region that processes memory. Even worse, many people eat macadamias coated in chocolate, sugar, or other gourmet toppings. The result is a bomb of empty and inflammatory calories, and the brain, which is already fighting against time, ends up with even more to process. Now, if you feel your mind doesn't work like it used to, or if you're afraid your frequent forgetfulness might be a sign of something worse, there is a way to reverse that path. In the comments of this video, I left a medicinal salmon recipe based on a recent study that revealed a combination of natural ingredients capable of protecting the brain, restoring mental clarity, and preserving memory for much longer. It's simple to make, uses ingredients you probably already have in your fridge, and might be the first step to recovering the mental agility you had at 40. It's worth checking out, because sometimes the key to the memory you thought was lost is in how you feed your brain every day. And speaking of that, the next nut, although very common in sweet and savory recipes, carries a hidden risk that can worsen with age, especially for those who already experience tingling, tremors, or nerve pain. The worst nut 2, cashew. A hidden risk behind its versatility, cashew nuts are a staple in Brazil, but also very popular in the United States and Europe, especially in roasted, salted forms, or turned into cashew butter, plant-based milk, and vegan cheeses. They're versatile, tasty, and often marketed as a natural alternative to processed products. And in fact, it's much better to eat cashews than to reach for fast food or ultra-processed snacks. There's no comparison. But here's the warning. For the aging brain, the problem isn't the cashew itself, but how and how often it's consumed. Cashews are among the nuts with the lowest density of neuroprotective nutrients. They contain little selenium, vitamin E, and omega-3 fatty acids, the key nutrients that protect neurons in other nuts, like pecans and walnuts. In addition, cashews contain oxalates, natural compounds that, in excess, can interfere with the absorption of important minerals like magnesium and calcium. If you already have a history of kidney stones or digestive issues, excessive consumption of cashews can worsen those conditions. Another point of concern: most people consume cashews in industrialized versions, heavily salted, loaded with refined oils, and full of additives to increase shelf life. These additives, when accumulated over the years, contribute to systemic inflammation, including in the brain. And there's one more silent factor. Because of its creamy texture and butter-like taste, cashews are often used as a base for recipes in large quantities. Cashew butter, cashew milk, cashew cheese, What seems like a healthy choice often turns into an excess of fat and antioxidants. Without the nutritional payoff, the brain needs to stay strong. Of course, if you eat cashews moderately, occasionally, and in their purest form, there's no problem at all. But for those over 60, with a slower metabolism and a need for highly efficient brain foods, it's important to prioritize options with greater functional density. A suggestion: use cashews as a complement, never as the base of your diet. Mix them with other nuts that are richer in protective compounds, like walnuts or Brazil nuts. And always choose unsalted, unsweetened, oil-free versions. Because in the end, it's not about exclusion, it's about balance. And speaking of balance, the next and final section brings a reflection on how small food choices made every day can be the difference between an active mind at 90 or a tired mind at 70. Nut 3. Industrial mixed nuts. The poison disguised as health. You've seen those pretty jars filled with assorted nuts, sold as healthy snacks or natural energy, right? They look perfect, colorful, crunchy, easy to carry, and marketed as the best choice for people who want to take care of their health. But here's a warning that many people ignore. These ready-made mixed nut packs might be sabotaging your brain health every single day. The problem here isn't necessarily which nuts are in there, but how they were treated before they reached you. Most of those jars are packed with ultra-processed nuts, roasted in refined vegetable oil, heavily salted with excessive sodium, sweetened with inverted sugar, or coated with a thin layer of natural seasoning, which in reality is a blend of monosodium glutamate, maltodextrin, preservatives, and artificial flavors. You might even see walnuts and pecans on the label, but what you're actually eating is a distorted, inflammatory, and potentially toxic version of those foods. And there's more. To cut costs, these mixes are usually loaded with peanuts and cashews, which, as we've seen, have lower neuroprotective density and can be harmful when consumed in excess. Now stop and think. If you're over 60, your body no longer metabolizes fats the same way. Your brain already faces natural challenges in cellular regeneration, adding day after day a source of oxidized fat, excessive sodium, and chemical additives is like putting sand in the engine of a car that's already run hundreds of thousands of miles. Of course, the occasional handful won't destroy your memory, but the daily habit, the false idea that it's natural and healthy, could be silently shortening your autonomy, your clarity, your mental energy. Want a practical tip? Buy nuts that are raw or minimally roasted with no salt, no sugar, no additives. Make your own mix at home, using the varieties you learned about in this video. And if possible, store them in dark jars or in the fridge to prevent oxidation. Because when in doubt, it's better to eat a single real nut than a handful of industrial illusions. Which of these tips do you find hardest to put into practice in your day-to-day life? We all have our challenges, and sharing here might be the first step to overcoming them with the right support. And if this content helped you in any way, take a second to subscribe to the channel. Taking care of your mind starts with small decisions like this one. And if you want to go even deeper into protecting your brain, I recommend watching the next video on the channel. There, you'll discover which simple foods eaten by many every morning are helping thousands of seniors keep their minds sharp and active, even after 80. It's the perfect follow-up to everything we've talked about today. See you there.